We have a lot of results to get to. Not all of the results are obviously going to be final. We know how this works in Washington State. We have some of the major counties that have yet to come in, so we're going to give you the results as we have them, and then we will be updating them throughout the evening. We are live here in Kirkland at Vossler Studios. How great is this? Let's Go Washington is having their election night party here, and they wanted it to be a place where people could watch the results come in, celebrate all the hard work that went into the initiatives. So the people who are here in the room tonight are people who volunteered for the initiatives, supported the initiatives, went out, collected signatures, put up signs, whatever it is. Brian Haywood with Let's Go Washington said it was important to him to have a night separate from the two parties to be able to celebrate the work that took place across the political spectrum to be able to get these initiatives to the ballot. So we're going to go dive into some of the key races that are happening right now. I got to say, guys, before I even dive in, I know we're watching the presidential race. I have a bet I made with all of you that Donald Trump would get over 40% in Washington State. Not quite yet. He's at 38.33 though. And Donald Trump right now with 216 electoral points to Kamala Harris's 193, but nobody's been calling that race. So we're going to monitor the presidential race in the background, of course, but I think if you're tuning into this, you're tuning into it because you're interested in Washington state politics and the local, state and federal races there. So let's dive into those. You know, a race that we have been heavily involved in, of course, is the race for governor. Dave Reichert versus Bob Ferguson, trying to become the first Republican to win in Washington state in 40 years. So again, with the caveat that you have some key counties that have not come in yet at this juncture, and I just saw the results switch. Bob Ferguson up now 56% to Dave Reichert's 42%. So those results should be updating here just momentarily. I want to talk about the initiatives because, you know, second to the governor's race, the initiatives for me, I think for a lot of Washington voters, have really been something that's been unifying, something that's been about getting out and exercising our democratic process. I told you guys on the show today that I thought the initiative to keep natural gas, as we just flip through some of the races right now, I thought the initiative to keep natural gas would be doing the best. And right now, that is the case. And one of the reasons I said that, right now it's up 55% to 45%. That's Initiative 2066. One of the reasons is, to me, it was the least complicated on the ballot. You know, the language was more clear. The other ones were written in a very confusing way. And it was, we said on the show, you know, they included these lines about what the fiscal impact would be. And for the natural gas ban, there isn't really a fiscal impact yet that they could point to, so I think that's why we're seeing that do so well. Let's go through where the other initiatives are at this juncture. Initiative 2117, which is the initiative to repeal the CCA. I think we're still waiting on some figures there. Let me pull this up. Oh, here, I've got it on my screen here. Right now, losing by a lot, 37%. To 62% no. So again, that's Initiative 2117, which is the initiative to repeal the Climate Commitment Act. I would say it's the one I was most passionate about. I mean, these aren't great numbers right now. That's about 2.1 million votes, and it's failing significantly. 37% voting yes, 62% voting no. I think that's a hard margin to come back from, even with not all the votes counted. And look, this is another one of those where they spent $26 million plus trying to vilify that initiative, paint it as, you know, the worst thing in the world, the climate's gonna end, kids are gonna get asthma, whatever it is. And so I don't think it's a particular surprise, given the amount of money they put into vilifying that initiative, to see it going the way it's going right now. Initiative 2124, this is one that had some pretty bipartisan support. And so it is doing better, but it's still failing at this stage with, again, about 2.1 million votes in. 44% of voters saying yes, they want the WA Cares program to be optional. They want it to be your choice whether to pay into the state's basically socialized long-term care program. And 56% are saying no. I wouldn't say that's callable right now. Hopefully things will take a turn. But this was another one of those initiatives where SEIU, one of the most powerful unions in the state of Washington, dumped a ton of money into trying to get Initiative 2124 defeated. Why did they do that? Well, it's because long-term care workers benefit from the long-term care program. And the truth is that if you were to make WA cares optional, a lot of people would opt out, and it's kind of an agreement that the program would fold. It would no longer be financially solvent. So SEIU didn't want to see that. That was going to be their cash cow for decades to come. So right now, Initiative 2124 failing 44% to 56%. I want to go into now capital gains. I said on the show today that I felt as if the capital gains initiative would perform the worst out of all of them because it's the easiest for Democrats to vilify. Right now, with about more votes coming in, 2.4 million votes, it is failing fairly significantly. It's interesting because the Secretary of State's website has a total for votes here that's over 100%. And so it's hard to know what the real figure is, but there's some consistency across platforms that it's failing about 40% to 60%. I always have to laugh when people are concerned about election results and stuff, and then we go to the Secretary of State for election results, and they have a percentage that combined is like 110% or 160%. We do know, however, that initiative is also failing. So at this juncture, there is only one of the Let's Go Washington initiatives that is succeeding. It is the one that we predicted would do the best. Again, that's Initiative 2066, which would prevent lawmakers in Olympia from instituting a natural gas ban in your home or in your place of business. If they were to do that, people who have natural gas in their homes would be out potentially tens of thousands of dollars. So we'll hope that one sticks. Again, it's interesting on the Secretary of State's website, they have some mathematical errors in their results. So that's why we're always so careful with what we read to you, because clearly they've got a little, Daryl would know what the word is, coding issue, Daryl, and Daryl and Nicole are here too. They're in the back getting results and getting everything up for you guys. So I want to move on, and I know we're going to be hearing from Brian Haywood. This is the Let's Go Washington party. He's expected to take the stage here as results come a little more clear, so maybe around 8:45, and so we'll listen in to what he has to say when he goes up on stage. So there are a couple other key races that to me, will absolutely make a significant difference in the state of Washington. One of them is the person who's going to lead our public school system. And, the thing about this, you've got Chris Rakedahl, and I hate to see this result. This result, maybe more than any other, is making me sick. And it's nothing against Chris Rakedahl as a person. He's been on our show, the current two-term incumbent in that race. But our public school system is failing. Right now he's ahead of David Olson, 54%, or well, according to latest results that they keep updating, 54% to 46% for David Olson. I'm actually really surprised by that. And again, nobody's called this race. There's about 2.2 million votes in. Nobody's called this race, but when you get, for Chris Rakedahl, like I said, I anticipated, because he's even unpopular among Democrats. The Seattle Times knocked him for the failing state of our education system. And I think all parents, the test scores are what the test scores are. And I think I like to believe there's a growing number of parents who are sick of the, gender ideology and the political and social indoctrination. And I also, and I'm not calling this a win for Chris Rakedahl by any stretch right now, but there was also a feeling that David Olson had a window here because this is a nonpartisan race. They're not on the ballot with an R or a D next to their name, and so there's a thought that, okay, in a blue state, if people aren't default voting, then things might be better off, right? But right now, Chris Rakedahl is leading in that race, and I got to say, that's a pretty disappointing place to be, even if it is 8:40 p.m. and we're just getting a grasp on things. The other race that I think Republicans had really hoped the seat they could take from Democrats is the Commissioner of Public Lands race. And Jamie Hura Butler, she got some key endorsements, of course, a former congresswoman in the 3rd Congressional District, a very moderate Republican. But right now she is trailing Dave Updegrove, 47% to 53% now. And, this is also one that boggles me, where you really have to say that it's about default voting. And one of the reasons I say that is, we kind of joke about this on the show, but when you talk about the Commissioner of Public Lands, the person who's going to be managing our beautiful environment here and our lands and all that, do you want the Seattle progressive? Have you seen Seattle lately? Like, do you want a guy who's, part of a policy making that has, led once beautiful parks in Seattle to turn into homeless encampments and drug needles everywhere? Or do you want, a Republican with a good track record on environmental issues when, some of the most beautiful, pristine parts of our state are Republican areas? So I think Dave Updegrove getting that position would really be a loss for the state of Washington. And in fact, the Seattle Times had said that Jamie Herrera Butler is closer to the current lands commissioner in terms of the policies she supports on how to deal with wildfires, foresting, et cetera, than even the Democrat is to Hillary Franz. And Hillary Franz, of course, a Democrat. We're going to keep going here, and again, we're expecting to hear from Brian Haywood on stage. When that happens, we'll take his remarks here at the Let's Go Washington live election night watch party in Kirkland. In the Attorney General's race, I can't say these results are particularly surprising at this juncture. Pete Serrano, a Republican in that race, is at 43%. Nick Brown is at 56%. Nick Brown, came in with some key endorsements. It was almost like people like Jay Inslee and Bob Ferguson were sort of setting him up throughout his career to run for Attorney General. And Pete Serrano, I think we've had Pete on the show. Pete's an awesome guy. But I knew this was going to be an uphill battle for him, and he's fairly new to Washington. He moved here from out of state, got involved in some of the Second Amendment fights and fighting in court. But he's still a fairly new commodity here, and so that's a pretty big race that requires some level of name recognition. And so, that race is going to be pretty hard, I think, for Pete Serrano to overtake the deficit that he's in. Here is the real nail-biter, folks, because there hasn't been a lot of wins so far for those of us who dissent from the prevailing political view. The race for state Supreme Court. So here's the thing. Again, nonpartisan race, no R or D next to their name. I endorsed Dave Larson in this race. This is a race where polling put the number of undecideds at like 75% because there's not a lot of news coverage for a state Supreme Court race. Get this right now, and I got to go to the double decimal points. Sal Mungia, who's the Democratic choice, 49.87%. Dave Larson, who's my choice, 49.64%. I've got to see what they're celebrating. Hold on. North Carolina. Just called North Carolina for former President Donald Trump. I was like, I got to see what they're cheering about. I got to say, we're doing our duty to the voters of the state of Washington. You can see national results all over your feeds. There's a million outlets covering the national race. We're going to cover state politics, some of the federal races, which, by the way, I've got to get to some congressional races here in a moment because there are some we haven't discussed. But I got so much anxiety about the presidential race. I told you guys, I'm a first-time Trump voter, and I don't want the first time I vote for the guy to be the time he loses. So, again, I just want to reiterate, because I kind of interrupted it, in the state Supreme Court, the difference between the two candidates here, we have to go to 2 decimal points, 49.84% for Sal Mungia and 49.66% for Dave Larson. So that is going to be incredibly, incredibly close. If it's okay with the team back there, I'm going to go into some congressional races that I know are being watched very, very closely. There are 2 congressional seats that Republicans hope they can flip. These are seats that not too long ago were in Republican hands, starting in the 3rd Congressional District. So this is the Congressional District in Southwest Washington, right across the border from Portland. So it's also getting increasingly blue. I kind of worry if Republicans can't retake it this time, it's probably just going to be a Democratic seat. Right now, Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez, the Democratic incumbent in that race, is ahead, 51% of the vote, which isn't significant by any stretch of the imagination. And Joe Kent is at 48% of the vote. And so again, we're updating things as these results come in, but Joe Kent trailing in the 3rd Congressional District. So I I was hard on Joe Kent when he first ran. I thought he leaned too hard into the sort of Trumpism. That was also when I personally had DDS. But I've seen this time around a more disciplined candidate, a more polished candidate, and so I would like to see him be able to come out with a victory here. I don't know if that's going to be plausible. So far, not great results for the Republican Party. Now, over in the 4th Congressional District, it's a different story because we know that there are 2 Republicans running in the 4th Congressional District, Jared Sessler and the incumbent Dan Newhouse. Dan Newhouse committed the cardinal sin of voting to impeach former President Donald Trump. And ever since then, Republicans running to the right of him have tried to get him out of office. This time around, it's Jared Sessler, a businessman hoping, running again as the pro-Trump. He's been endorsed by Trump, trying to unseat Dan Newhouse. And one of the things that's been interesting about watching this R-on-R race, because you don't see an awful lot of those in Washington State, is that, the Washington State Republican Party was helping Jared Sessler try to unseat a sitting Republican, sending out nasty mailers, sending out mailers of Dan Newhouse pictured next to Bob Ferguson. It was at some, harmless event, painting him as a Democrat. And what I said on my show is I thought it was such an utter waste of money and so incredibly irresponsible for the Washington State Republican Party to spend a dime trying to unseat a Republican rather than spending the little money they have on other races. So right now, honestly, this is a place that pleases me. Dan Newhouse is winning, but just narrowly in that district. He's at 50%. And some change. Jared Sessler at 48%. Also worth noting, there is about 2% write-in votes, and that's because, of course, Democrats tried to run a write-in candidate. They're not doing well, but you can see 2% could be the difference. 2% could be the thing that decides that race. And actually, Jared Sessler, one of their tactics was to send out mailers to Democratic voters telling them that there was a Democrat running that they could write in. And so, if that's the difference, maybe that was a smart strategy on the part of Jared Sessler. But right now, Dan Newhouse is maintaining a lead, certainly too close to call. All right, I want to go to the 8th Congressional District. I'm a little biased. This is my congressional district. This was held by Congressman Dave Reichert up until his retirement announcement in 2018, and then it had been a Republican district all that time. Dino Rossi ran for it against Kim Schreier. He ended up losing. It went into Democratic hands. Jesse Jensen ran in 2020, again in 2022. Matt Larkin, again, Kim Schreier kept the seat, and right now she has a pretty commanding lead against Republican Carmen Goers. Kim Schreier, the incumbent in the 8th Congressional District, with 55% of the vote. Carmen Goers with 45% of the vote. And I actually, and not to say that things can't change, I anticipated that race being a little bit closer, only because you saw this absolute inundation of spending on Kim Schreier's part very late. And what that signaled to me is they had some concern. All of a sudden they had outside groups spending millions of dollars in ads on her behalf when they had been pretty quiet. But Carmen Goers performed very well for a fairly new to the political arena candidate in the primary. And I gotta say, I think that race would look a lot different right now if the Republicans had tried 1 ounce to help Carmen Goers. I'm just going to say it. The Republican Party has done very little they did very little to help Carmen Goers, but very little to try to get back a seat that they only lost 6 years ago, and that has been fairly narrow on the margins every 2 years since. So it's like they lost the seat and they're like, we'll give it up. And that's just odd to me because I think Carmen Goers is a really, really good candidate, and I would have liked to see them give her a little bit more support, and that race could be different. I do want to say in the race for United States Senate, some of the media outlets in Seattle called that race, Nicole Darrow, within minutes? Oh, they're back there. Within minutes, they called this race. And, these results right now, Maria Cantwell's at 60%. Dr. Raul Garcia's at 40%. That's kind of where the polling was. I mean, post-primary, the polling did not look good for Dr. Garcia. And I don't know, sometimes it's like, what is it about certain candidates? Because of course you have the party line voters. Like, they're going to vote for the R's, they're going to vote for the D's. But then in there you have this immense swing, and I'll just use this example. So keep that in mind. Dr. Raul Garcia at 40%, and Maria Cantwell, the Democrat, at 60%. But if you compare that to the governor's race, the margins are Dave Reichert still losing. Right now, the latest results, Bob Ferguson at 56%, and Dave Reichert at 43%. So you're seeing there that independent vote and how things can swing. But that's an unfortunate margin for Dave Reichert to have at this juncture, especially with 2.5 million votes in. But you can see that there's clearly more swing voters going for someone like Dave Reichert than Raul Garcia. And so you kind of start to, there's some name recognition there. There's more ads and money being spent in that race for something like that. Now, because we're expecting Brian Haywood to hop up on stage, I do want to go back through where all 4 of the initiatives are. We do have a ton of other races to get to, the other congressional districts, some races in Pierce County that I'm eagerly excited to talk about, and then some of these legislative races that will decide whether Democrats achieve a supermajority. But I do just want to rehash really quickly where the initiatives are at, because I know that a lot of you are heavily invested in where those are. So let's start with Initiative 2066, which is the no gas ban. Do not ban gas from our homes or businesses, weirdos. So right now it's winning, but not by a lot, 51% to 49%. I hear stirring back there. Are they getting ready to talk? Maybe. As soon as we see them take the stage, I'll shut up and let Brian talk, and let's go Washington. But again, Initiative 2066, it's winning, but only by the narrowest of margins. Not fully confident in that one at this juncture. The other 3 initiatives are failing, and some by some pretty sizable margins. Initiative 2117, which is the initiative to repeal the Climate Commitment Act. Right now it's failing, 62% of the vote to 38% of the vote. Might as well take a knife and stab me right in the heart. Initiative 2124 to make the long-term care tax optional, huge union spending to defeat this. Right now it's being defeated 56% to 44%. Again, you look at the amount of money, and I'll go on a rant about this in a minute. I'm not giving up hope, but some of these are, the other one, repealing the capital gains tax. They paint this as a tax on the rich. The media didn't do its job to really explain how it's a backdoor income tax. Right now, that is failing 63% to 37%. I think those numbers, so that's the latest, 63% to 37%. That just kills me. And look, let me rant about that really quick before we get to some of these other races. And we do have Nicole and Daryl monitoring the chat if you have races you're interested in tonight. I've never seen anything like what we've seen from the Democratic Party and from its allies over the last year and a half. It has been dishonest. It has been offensive to voters.
Hey guys,
is Brian Haywood coming on stage here? All right, let me see if my team is going to take it. I'll let you hear
So it looks like we're going to win 4 out of the 7 that we did, but unfortunately tonight there's 3 that don't look like they're getting past the finish line. 2066, stopping the state from banning natural gas. Right now with Cheyenne, Cheyenne's always drinking all the wine they produce, so they're a little late on their numbers seem to be late every year. Right now we're ahead 51% to 48% on this one. I think this one's going to pass. So we'll watch it. It puts a crimp in some of the dastardly plans they got in Washington up in Olympia. If we go through the other ones, let's go to the next one. Let's go to 2109. King, this one's ugly, right? We're losing this one right now, total 63 to 36% on the capital gains. A lot of people that want to pay an income tax. Boo. Yeah, so, and one of these, and let me go through these and then I want to say just a couple of words. I'll show you just sort of where the numbers are for those you that are enjoying the evening, not on your phone. Let's go to the next one. So we're 61 to 38 on 2117 on the people like paying extra on the gas, right? Just paying the gas tax. And these numbers can change, but I don't know if we've got enough gas in the tank to flip these over. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. And then 55-44 on the long-term care. Let me talk about this for a minute though, right? What did we do? And this is something I've been thinking about. I really, I was thinking we were going to win tonight. I really did. I wasn't blowing smoke at anybody I told that to. What I didn't completely comprehend was the power of $40 million aimed against you in 2 or 3 weeks, right? And if I got $40 million, I can convince you that the sky is black. I can convince you that there's these baby smokestacks that are going to come growing out of the ground because this guy moved here from California. I can convince you that grandma's going to die yesterday because you don't have this tax in place. I can convince you some things that aren't true. I also, and I don't want to, these are my excuses up front, but these are things I'm learning, so I'm sharing with you as I learn this, right? I learned that $40 million is a lot. They can just pummel you with it. And I think going into it, the last week, they added another $5 million the last week. So I don't think they have their numbers down just yet, or they wouldn't have put that money in. This came down, and they just kept hammering it and hammering it and hammering it, and they hammered us in King County. The other thing is, if I get to write the ballot initiative, if I get to write the ballot initiative, we may have had a different outcome, right? This thing kills puppies, kicks baby seals, and says bad words to women, or something like that, right? That's sort of... but those are the things that I don't think are totally surprising that we're in the state. That's what we got to fight against. But let me tell you why I'm going to go out with my chin up and feel like this was not a loss. Number one, we got 4 out of 7 passed. We got 3 laws that they definitely didn't want to pass in the House and Senate, passed by the House and Senate, and we forced a bipartisan majority to support it. That's pretty incredible. And then along the way, we met 1.3 million people who gave us now they gave us their phone number and email. That would have been easier, but they gave us their address, right? And I know what they voted for. I know what they signed. And it's a database and an understanding of Washington State that hasn't been in anybody's hands in a long time. We know that some people voted for 3 of them, and some people voted for 7, and some people only voted for 1. And we've got a database so that we can understand what's important to people and where they're at. And we can do a better job next time talking to these people. Right? So we've got this. We also created a network of over 1,000 volunteers across the entire state. That's harder than you would think, right? When I did it the first time, we didn't even get the first 11 issues qualified. I couldn't even get enough signatures because I found out I don't know 400,000 people. Right? But now I do. I know 1.3 million people, kind of. And more importantly, I know a bunch of volunteers that made this thing happen. And the way that we got the initiatives qualified, in part, was because we were able to not just have to rely on the paid signature gatherers, but we had a massive effort that gathered about 150 to 200,000 signatures for each initiative that were from volunteers. And that dramatically reduced the cost and allowed us to respond very quickly. And on 2066, which we won, right? It allowed us to do it in record time. So I don't think that the legislature should be partying or doing a whole lot of toasts, because we're going to be watching stupid crap that they do, and we'll go after them again if they go on stupid.
There we go.
The final thing that we did, though, is we built a campaign. And what I would suggest to you is that 40 years of one-party rule makes a state arrogant and sometimes corrupt. And those powers, they have money, they've got legal, they threw everything at us. They went after us in court. They tried to sneak through, some of you may have heard, they tried to sneak through, they tried to get these thrown off the ballot with a secret case that went all the way to the Supreme Court, and no one felt it was important enough to tell us so that we could go defend it. That's crazy. And so what we were fighting against was an institution with lots of power, entrenched power, and I didn't know the unions were so bloody rich. The billionaires, union bosses, and billion-dollar corporations are fighting this poor California millionaire. I know no one's crying crocodile tears for me, and I'll be fine. We are. Thank you. I appreciate it. But that's a lot of firepower. There was billion-dollar people lined up on the other side fighting us, supporting an institution that I think supports them. And as I dove in, especially 2117 was the one that was the most interesting to me. This is something I learned. Like I was accusing the governor. I said, when you retire, Governor Inslee, and I still challenged him on this. Governor Inslee, I'd like a commitment from you, Governor Inslee, when you retire, that you will not take any job or any investment or go to work for some place or take a board seat on some place that's taking a bunch of money from 2117, because that is a grift. And they've been running this, and I've begun to expose the grift. Reuven Carlisle, on a board that miraculously got 124 grants worth $40 million. I'm not saying he did anything illegal. I'm not implying that. But this is a corrupt system when you write the law and then step out of the legislature and then go on a board, and then that board magically gets $40 million, right? Of people's money who can't afford it. And this kind of corruption, I think, is worth fighting. And so what I want you to take away tonight is that we didn't win all 7. We won 4 out of 7. But we began our fight right here. We began our fight against the arrogance of Olympia, and we began our fight against the corruption of Olympia. And we're not done. Some of you, I'm going to be done for a couple of weeks. I'm going to go to Japan with my wife. Enjoy it. But we're not done fighting. I'm not done fighting. I'm not sure exactly what the form of the next phase is going to be. But we've put the infrastructure in place that did not exist 3 years ago to fight back. I haven't even made it to Japan yet. So. I appreciate, I want to say mostly, my wife wisely stays completely out of politics. And I don't share a whole bunch of it with her. We just talk about things that husband and wives talk about, other than this crazy $7 million that I spent on this little thing over here. Right? But I want to thank Rochelle for being patient with me. Thank you. I want to thank the volunteers who stepped up and did things in cold, rainy weather. Well, some of you, I don't know if there's anybody in this room, but the first time we tried this, we had people counting initiatives on Christmas Eve, right? Because we were trying to see if we didn't know how to count before this year we bought scanners, and so we had a lot better idea of where we're at. We've gotten better each year. We had people counting on Christmas Eve, right? Trying to make sure we had enough of those. We've had people whose pockets have been sewn shut for a couple of years, who opened up their pockets and donated to us to help us get over the hump. And I appreciate that. I appreciate you taking a chance on us. And I hope you'll go away from this believing that that wasn't a waste of money, that we've built an infrastructure that can begin to fight back. And today's the beginning of that next fight. Thank you very much, everybody.
Let's go pro-Washington initiatives saying the fight isn't over. Right now, 3 of the initiatives are trailing. 1, the initiative that would stop the government from banning natural gas in your home or business, is ahead, but ever so slightly. Brian, I think he's out ahead of his skis a little bit, wants to be optimistic. That's fine. He has put a lot of work into this, but the results in that particular initiative are far too close to be able to call that it's going to be an absolute victory. I'm going to revisit that one really quick just to see where Initiative 2066 is at. Yeah, 51% passing, 49% voting no on Initiative 2066. And so that is the only one of the 4 that is passing at this point. And just to, I'm going to get to some other race results here, but what's so important about these initiatives for us to discuss is the amount of deceit that went into and the amount of effort that went into actually thwarting the democratic process, a process that is protected under the state constitution. The Democratic Party harassed lawful signature gatherers. They encouraged others to harass and intimidate lawful signature gatherers. They passed a law that would make the actual language on the ballot more advantageous to their side. They spent more than $26 million trying to defeat just one of the initiatives on the Climate Commitment Act, the Climate Industrial Complex, as I call it. They, used lawfare to try to keep the initiatives off the ballot, disenfranchising the 1.5 million or so Washington voters who signed on to one of them. Those things are important. Those things are important for people to know. The media did not do its job in calling that out. They want to talk about January 6th, Republicans are a threat to our democracy and all of that. And at the same time, they have taken so many steps. And they're not these, riots at the U.S. Capitol, but they're steps to undermine democracy nonetheless and to absolutely squash any form of dissent. And the media not taking that seriously and not calling balls and strikes is a failure of the Fourth Estate. And there'll be time to debrief and list all of the things that were done to defeat those initiatives. I also will just say, as Brian alluded to, they're 4 for 3 if the natural gas ban holds. The legislature already had to pass 3 initiatives into law. So the record is on the side of the initiative backer, of the people who signed the initiatives, but clearly I would have loved to see the meltdown in the climate industrial complex and the long-term care program had those 2 passed, but they are not going to make it across the finish line. All right, I want to reset on a couple things and then get to some new races. First of all, where's my sweet husband? Husband! Diet Coke! Regular Coke. Michael Vossler in the back, who owns this beautiful place we're in, I brought him yesterday a bottle of whiskey, an unopened bottle of whiskey. I'm going to need you to crack that open, and I need to drink that, Mike. Thank you, babe. Because this is depressing. Virtually no positive race results in the statewide office and in the congressional races. I mean, there's a lot of disappointments tonight, so I need booze. I would have drank it anyway to celebrate. The only one I just want to revisit, I love my husband, he's the best. Michael, I'm yelling at you, where's the whiskey?
You want it?
We're live on air, yeah. We're ready for it. Okay, good. People are gonna be like, Brandi's such a lush. Did you see the results? So the only one I just want to reset on it is the only little glimmer of hope I have right now, the state Supreme Court race. Because again, you have a situation where there isn't parties next to their names. And so I have said that, Dave Larson is the person that I supported in the race. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to pull it up here. Give me a second. Yeah. So here, go ahead, Michael. Thank you, Michael, for having us here. Only the finest. My husband's looking at me. Listen, first of all, when you do a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure the team gets some. When you do a podcast, this is what you get to do. You get to be sad and you get to drink your feelings. My husband's giving me this crazy look. Anyway, state Supreme Court race, it's like 50-50. This thing is too close to call. It's down to so technically, Dave Larson is ahead. 49.78% for Dave Larson to 49.73%. You cannot discount the importance of having someone who believes in the Constitution and upholding the Constitution on our state's high court. So we're going to hope that those results hold and give us something to be excited about. I want to go down to Pierce County. The race for Pierce County Executive is critical. It's really about, after 2 terms of Bruce Dammeier, very well-liked Republican county executive, he was term limited out, and so you have Kelly Chambers versus a far-left Seattle-type progressive, Ryan Mello, and I've said of this race, this is about stopping the politics of King County from moving to Pierce County. Well, right now, Kelly Chambers is behind 49% of the vote to 51%. Pierce County, I pray that those results do not hold. Ryan Mello is someone who will make the homeless crisis worse, someone who will continue the pattern of the vilification of law enforcement and overtaxation. I would also note, I wish I had saved the clip to play for you all tonight, but you'll be familiar with it. This is someone who was asked in a candidate form about the initiatives. He said he didn't support any of them, fine. But he said he didn't even support the initiative process. He doesn't even support the initiative process. He says he doesn't support the right of citizens to push back or question things their government does. He said he prefers bringing other stakeholders in and talking over issues. Are voters not stakeholders, Ryan Mello? I think voters are the key stakeholders. One of the only stakeholders that you should care about, because those are the people you serve. So I'm really hoping Kelly Chambers can pull that out as more results are counted. Also, since we're in Pierce County, I do want to talk about the race for sheriff down there. Patty Jackson against Keith Swank. Ed Troyer announcing, actually he broke the news on our show earlier this year that he would be retiring. Keith Swank is ahead. He's not a candidate that got the mainstream sort of endorsements. He's at 51% of the vote, and Patty Jackson is at 48% of the vote. And Patty Jackson actually is the choice of current Sheriff Ed Troyer in Pierce County. So I can't imagine he's too happy with those results. All right, we're going to tick through some of the other statewide races and congressional races, and then I want to get to what's a really important narrative, and we'll have Brian Haywood come and join us in a moment, also a special guest that I spoke to earlier, who I think you're going to be delighted to see. I want to get to this issue of the balance of power and whether Democrats are going to achieve a supermajority in the Senate. Look, results so far are not good for Republicans, and we'll talk a little bit later about where the Republican Party goes from here. Let's start with the race for lieutenant governor, though, go through some of these statewide races and see where things stand. I already said I voted for Denny Heck. He's one of the few Democrats that I actually voted for, because I think he's good at the job. You know, it's not a job where you're out there creating policy. You are the referee in the state Senate. And he's called balls and strikes. He said that the gas ban bill they cobbled together at 2 a.m. was a hot mess. And Dan Matthews, the Republican in that race, super nice guy, met him several times. When I heard him speak, he would talk about the Constitution and those issues. Okay, but can you do the job of lieutenant governor? So Denny Heck is easily leading in that race, not a particular surprise, 57% to Dan Matthews, who is at 43%. Going into the Secretary of State race, Steve Hobbs is the incumbent, was nice enough to join us on the show this week. We talked a little bit about the concern about the chain of custody issues with ballots. So, you know, he is a notable moderate Democrat. I think he's done an okay job as Secretary of State. We disagree on some things, but he's been responsive to us. There are some things his office has implemented that I think need to go away, like the Logically AI program. The Logically AI program monitoring feeds on social media for threats to the election. I had things that were scooped up by Logically AI. Ridiculous, but Steve Hobbs winning decisively, 60% to 40% for Dale Whitaker, his Republican challenger. I'm going to see here. State Treasurer, I think we're going to go to next. Mike Pellicati is the incumbent. Sharon Hannick is the challenger. We're seeing a similar theme here, 60%-ish to 40%. Mike Pellicati has 58%, Sharon Hannick at 42%. Man, these are not the results that Republicans want to see. And look, you know, you're in a blue state. Do I rant yet? I haven't even taken a drink of the whiskey they gave me. It boggles the mind, I've got to say. It boggles the mind that given where this state has gone in the last 10 years, all the issues that are very clearly worse, and people will continue to not only send the same party back to Olympia, but the exact same people who got us there. Our budget has bloated. It's ballooned. They have passed multiple new massive taxes in the last 5 years. Yet they're still facing a $5.1 billion budget deficit because they can't stop spending your money. They cannot stop spending your money. If you give it to them, they will find a way to spend it. We talked this past week. They'll spend it on laser hair removal for transgender inmates. That's a real thing. Yes, it is a real thing. They're sending out bids for the state. And then they want to complain that they don't have enough money for education and, oh, we need to raise property taxes and do all these things. So it boggles the mind. Like, I get it that Donald Trump is not popular in the state of Washington. I get it. But the Republicans here are not Donald Trump. Some of them might be a little closer to his brand of politics. Most of the Republicans here are fairly moderate Republicans. And they're not the people, as scary as you may think they are, they're not the people that have done these very scary things to our state around crime, homelessness, police defunding, and all of that. It really does boggle the mind. We'll just tick through again. Insurance Commissioner, yep, you're seeing a similar result there. Patty Kuderer, who, this is an open seat, and so she's going to move from the state legislature into the position of insurance commissioner. She's got 57% of the vote to Phil Fortunato's 43% of the vote. I think down the line you're going to see very similar results here. Let's go to 1st Congressional District. We'll go through a couple of these. Susan Del Bene is the incumbent in the 1st Congressional District. She has 64% of the vote to Jeb Brewer's 36% of the vote. Let's see here. Do you guys want to, Daryl and Nicole, do you want to skip ahead to anything in particular? Or do we want to keep going down the list of congressional candidates? In the 2nd Congressional District, Leif Johnson versus Rick Larsen. Rick Larsen is winning decidedly, 64% of the vote, 35% of the vote. Like, look, let's do this because I think it's relevant. I was in here earlier today, and I saw a familiar face. Before everything, he's gone now. We taped an interview with him. I saw a familiar face. I saw Dino Rossi. Dino Rossi, of course, famously won, then lost, then won, then lost the 2004 governor's race. He then ran for U.S. Senate, ran for United States Congress, wasn't able to pull either of those off. But, you know, he had, and I asked him, I said, hey, you know, he's kind of been out of the public spotlight. I said, are you willing to talk to us about the state of the Republican Party in Washington? At that point, we didn't know the results. We were just sort of talking ahead of time about, you know, what the results could show us about the viability of the Republican Party. We also talked a little bit about, you know, what happened to him in the governor's race and, you know, kind of the state of things in Washington overall. So what I'd like to do is play for you the conversation I had again before results dropped earlier today with Dino Rossi, and then we'll update some results on the back end.
So I've been helping candidates that I like. That's why, you know, I've been just here and there, just picking candidates that I can help raise money for, go speak at their events, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and this will be, I mean, a predictor, because by the time we air this, we'll know, but what do you think about the governor's race?
I think Dave has a chance. I think, You know, one thing I've sensed is that there just hasn't been a lot of energy on the Democrat side. There just really hasn't been. I mean, like even in my neighborhood, which would normally have a lot of Kamala signs, nobody seems to be energized on that side. And so
Dino freaking Rossi.
that would be me.
I was like, we promised special guests, and then I see Dino with this. I didn't even recognize you with the, what is this?
Oh, I'm
Scruff?
incognito.
Incognito. It didn't
Yeah, with
work.
$40 million to your face on TV,
Oh.
I got recognized on a cruise ship in the middle of the Mediterranean. I said,
Yeah.
okay.
I'm sure they heard all sorts of bad things about you.
Oh, actually, I was at DSW, you know, the shoe store.
Yeah.
I was in line, and this lady behind me, this was with the beard, and she says, "Boy, you look really familiar." I went, I didn't say anything, and she goes, "No, you look really familiar." I didn't say anything, and finally, so I pulled up on my phone one of the pictures without a beard, and I went, "Do I look like this guy?" And she goes, "Oh God, no." She said, "No, you look like Roy Scheider
Oh
from
my
Jaws." I
That
said,
is-
"Yes, ma'am."
Oh God.
Roy
no.
Scheider standing in line with you at the DSW shoe store with a coupon in his hand nonetheless.
Yeah, that's funny. Whenever I'm in Seattle, it's like, "You Brandi Kruse?" I'm like, "No,
No, exactly. Yeah.
not me. I don't know who that is." So, gosh, you're here. Are you planning on getting into political life? I haven't seen much of you since 2018.
No, I just help candidates I like.
Yeah.
And
Who do you like this time around? And we're taping this before the first ballot drops, so we don't know what the results are going to be.
yeah, so I've been helping Kelly Chambers running for Pierce County Executive, helping Michael Baumgartner over in Eastern Washington. And I served with him in the Senate when I was reappointed in 2017. He was definitely one of the smartest guys in the caucus. As a buddy of mine from Boston would say, he's wicked smart.
Wicked.
And so I've been helping candidates that I like, and that's why I've been just here and there, just picking candidates that I can help raise money for, go speak at their events,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Yeah, and this will be, I mean, a predictor, because by the time we air this, we'll know. But what do you think about the governor's race?
I think Dave has a chance. I think one thing I've sensed is that there just hasn't been a lot of energy on the Democrat side. There just really hasn't been. I mean, like even in my neighborhood, which would normally have a lot of Kamala signs, like nobody seems to be energized on that side. And
She's
so
not a very energizing.
hired many people. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And so I think so that could lend itself. And I talked to Chambers earlier today in Pierce County, and she said the turnout is a little higher on Republican than it is Democrat. If that translates to state, Dave's got a shot.
I think that they've stopped being so voting. They're like, this is the system that we have. We need to use it. I say that when it comes to, I have to bring it up, when it comes to mail fire from a lot of Republicans to return to in-person voting, every time they bring up 2004. Every single time they bring up the governor's race as a reason that they don't trust mail-in. Do you feel a valid reason for Republicans not to trust it?
In King County had 3,600 votes set aside. This isn't a race that was 129 votes in the end. They got their votes that they knew were not legitimate ballots, that were absentees. And someone on high from the envelope, and you can't tell your ballot from mine. When people say that we need a cheat-proof majority of votes, that's what they mean. They also counted 1,900 more ballots than they actually had people who voted. They signed in to vote, and with felons and dead people and the like. So that all counts. You have, a bigger margin, because in the city, in the Democrat strongholds, if it's close, they're going to figure out how it happened. Even the canvassing
believe
board.
that?
Oh, of course,
Okay.
I watched it. It happened. And
But 20 years ago.
it's nothing's changed. The canvassing board is 3 Democrats. When they have a ballot that's in question, they'll look at it and they'll vote on whether it's a legitimate. It was 2 to 1 when I ran, and pretty much it looked like it was Republican one got thrown out. And so these are things. That's why you can't close.
Yep.
And so that's the reality of it.
Too big to rig.
And I don't know. Our polling does indicate that dead people prefer mail-in ballots.
People also prefer governor, or not governor, oh my gosh, Attorney General Bob Ferguson's.
Yes.
Yeah, he sent quite a few of those to
I
deceased people.
know.
In fact, Nicole's Hall it was brilliant. It was a dead person who received a chicken check from Bob Ferguson. Best Halloween costume ever. Let me end with this. Definitely, the races that you run, Republicans have done seats in the House. They've lost seats in the Senate. Democrats are dangerously close to supermajorities. They have no more statewide elected seats on the entire West Coast, not just here. What will tell you at the end of this, when the results are certified, whether the Washington State Party is still a viable party in our state?
Well, I mean, the reality is that the state Republican Party doesn't have a lot of money to do the things that, and the Democrats have limited money essentially when you go up against them. I mean, I was outspent in every race I ever had.
Yeah.
Ever. Even my state Senate races, I was outspent.
Yeah.
So, you just have to, do it a different way. The opportunities with social media and other avenues make it affordable to contact people, and that's moving in that direction. And so it's not just the big TV where it costs you $700,000 to get 1,000 points to move any numbers, right? If you're a candidate statewide, you have to do it in Seattle, and you have to spend that money in Portland. Only 16% of the people can actually vote for you.
Yeah, Portland DMA, 100%.
And Eastern Washington is cheap. You can do it. That's not hard to do. And so it's very expensive to do it through television.
Yep.
But there are a lot of avenues now where people are kind of giving up on trusting the mainstream media.
Yeah.
And slowly that's changing.
Yeah.
And the younger people definitely aren't buying anymore either, which is good. So that opens up all sorts of avenues. I think
Avenue.
Like
yes.
this avenue,
Yes.
but also I went to the Senate when I was like 36, 37 years old, and so I've seen a lot of other time. And City of Seattle used to be all Republican. Now Dan Evans came from there.
Yeah.
Ken Eikenberry came from there.
Yeah.
Joel Pritchard came from there. These are governors, congressmen, attorney generals, and governors. And then East King County used to be all Democrat. Then it went Republican. Now it's all Democrat again. Eastern Washington is all Democrat. So the reality is, over time, these things change, and people, and you're seeing kind of a shift that's happening around the country right now. And I think the Trump phenomenon of reaching out to various groups is going to make a difference. It's going to build a very different coalition for the party, and some might not call themselves Republican, but they're voting Republican.
Yeah, that's me this time. There's Democrats I voted for. So Dino Rossi, I know you're heading to the Hyatt, which is why we pre-tape. It is so nice to see you. Great. You don't age.
Life's good. Very blessed.
Life's good. So you can enjoy. You're down in Nika a lot, so you're doing your thing. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So that our conversation with Dino Rossi, former candidate for governor, former state lawmaker, talking about the Republican Party and what they need to do to try to stay relevant. I'll say the results aren't great for the Republican Party in Washington. And I don't know if it'll lead to the rise of more independent candidates to try to challenge Democrats. One major theme for this evening is whether Democrats are going to be able to capture a supermajority in the Washington State Senate. We've talked about the must-win seats for Republicans. Now, they don't have to win all of these seats, but they have to avoid a 4 net seat gain for the Democratic Party. So as a reminder of what the must-win seats are for Republicans, we're talking about the 10th legislative district, the 14th, the 17th, also the 18th, the 5th, the 24th out on the peninsula, and the 28th in South Pierce County. So I want to go through each of those races individually to see where they sit at this hour. So over in the 5th legislative district, this is Bill Ramos, a Democrat, against Chad Mogendans, who, if you recall, Chad Mogendans had been in the race for office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. And then, through the endorsement process that the party did, he didn't get the party's endorsement, so he stayed true to the pledge to drop out and ended up entering this race. Chad Mogendans is trailing right now 52% for Bill Ramos, 47% for Chad Mogendans. Again, these are races that Republicans need to win if they want to avoid a Democratic supermajority in the state Senate. Going to the 10th legislative district, which is out there on Whidbey Island, the incumbent, State Senator Ron Muzal, is currently trailing in the 10th legislative district. He has 49, is a very, very close one. He has 49.77% to Janet St. Clair's 50.12%. Democrats poured a lot of money into this legislative district to try to get this seat from Senator Ron Mousseau. Right now, they're ahead, but I don't think that that race is close enough, certainly, for Democrats to claim victory there. All right, I want to go over to the 14th legislative district, which is in the Yakima area. This is one of the newly formed districts. Good result there for Republicans. Curtis King is way ahead there, 57% of the vote. Maria Beltran, the Democrat, 43% of the vote. So keeping that seat, really, really important to Republicans. It looks like they're going to do it. I want to go to a couple legislative districts in southwest Washington, which is just an interesting part of the state. You have the 3rd Congressional District, which is this purple district. And then within the 3rd Congressional District, you have the 17th and the 18th District, which are both on the list of must-win seats for the Republican Party. Right now, Paul Harris is doing that. In the 17th Legislative District, Republican Paul Harris has 50% of the vote. Marla Keithler in that race has 50% of the vote as well, so it's pretty close, but Paul Harris is ahead in the 17th Legislative District. I want to go now to the 24th Legislative District. We'll get to the 18th in a moment. So this is not a good result for Republicans. So again, this is the district over on the peninsula. And the reason why this Senate seat is open is that Kevin Vandeweghe, the Democrat who held this seat, decided to run for Public Lands Commissioner. So this was an open race. Republicans have a strong candidate in Marsha Kelbon, but she's really, I think, underperforming at least what my expectations were. Marsha Kelbon at 43% of the vote, Mike Chapman at 56% of the vote. Holy smokes, these are not good results for the Washington State Republican Party. Going to the state Senate race in the 28th, the incumbent there is Democrat Twina Nobles. This is a seat that Republicans need to take away. Right now, at least, it doesn't seem like they're going to do that. Twina Nobles at 54% of the vote. Maya Espinoza at 46% of the vote. Also not a good result for Republicans. Back now to the 18th Legislative District, again down within that 3rd Congressional District. Brad Benton needs to win this seat for Republicans. Right now, he's not doing it. He's got 49% of the vote to 51% of the vote for Democrat Adrian Cortez, who I've heard is a pretty moderate Democrat. But, you know, he's winning. It's still a pretty tight race. So we're going to continue to monitor things there. We've got, hey there, come on in. Yeah, this is a live election coverage. Grab that mic right there, sir.
How are we doing?
We're doing great. So we have Nicole. If you'll, so first of all, we're doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Okay.
I'm ready to fight.
We've been fighting.
I know.
We've been fighting. Brian Haywood, of course, the backer of the Let's Go Washington initiatives, joins us. Disappointing. I'm disappointed.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I'm glad we got, you know, on the upside, glass is half full. We got 4 out of 7.
Yeah.
Which is unprecedented in recent memory, but to lose the other 3 kind of hurts.
Especially by those margins. You know, we know
We're gonna win.
Yep.
And when I'm at the gas station talking to people, we're gonna win.
Yep.
$40 million every single day.
Lies.
That $5 million dumped in the last minute. Boom, 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 boom. It's Germany in World War II getting bombed, like in Dresden, right? I mean, it's just
decimation.
Yeah.
And you know, it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch the lies. And that was a consistent theme. I said, of all the election cycles I've covered, 15 years in politics, this is the most dishonest. It's not even close. I could take that from the governor's race all the way on down to the initiatives. And to know that these things are hurting working class people.
Right.
And, you know, whether they were tricked or duped or they just really believe these are the right policies, you know, I don't know. But I do know that it is almost impossible to combat that much spending.
Yeah.
So you were vilified quite a bit during this
Right.
process.
Right.
So they called you a millionaire.
Yeah.
And then when they got more scared, they call you to a multi-millionaire.
I think I went through tycoon to mogul to billionaire to multi-billionaire.
Okay.
And then demoted to millionaire, and then I got promoted to oligarch.
But the bottom line is you're still public enemy number one. You forced them, the unions, the WEA, the SEIU, to spend millions of dollars. They didn't buy these no votes for free.
Right.
They spent a lot of money. So are you worried about getting the Tim Eyman treatment? Are you worried about them trying to come after you to ruin your life?
Bring it.
You look in the camera and you say that. Right there in the camera to Bob Ferguson and his
Well,
cronies.
I don't.
Bring it.
Yeah, I think bring it. I think if it looks like Ferguson becomes our governor, if he decides to do something that is vindictive, let's say petty, or overly ambitious.
Petty, pushy, overly ambitious.
If he decides to do anything against me, I'll fight back, and I think it would be inappropriate for him to do that. He needs to. I mean, he needs to do half of the crap that he says in his ads, right?
Yeah.
He needs to be. If he's going to govern, he needs to govern the state in a positive way. If they spend they've already spent $40 million trying to make me look like a bad guy.
Yeah.
If
Well,
they come
Bill
after
Gates
me,
and people way richer than you spend
yeah,
more.
that's the billionaires, billion-dollar corporations, and union bosses,
Yeah.
right? And I didn't realize union bosses have this deep, unlimited money. I was
Turns
sort of
out.
surprised at how much money they've got to throw at it. But if they try to make it personal, I'm not going to go quietly. I mean, I'll turn up the heat and we'll start exposing. You can't have 40 years of a single party and not have corruption.
Yeah.
You can't have 40 years and not have problems in the way things get done. And if that's what they do, I would rather not have. That's a waste of time to get in that fight. But if they come after me personally, that's, of course, I'll fight back.
Yeah, can you do me a favor, though? If Bob Ferguson comes after me personally, can I borrow some money to defend myself? Because I don't have deep pockets to hire an attorney. The Tim Eyman treatment would happen very quickly with me.
Yeah,
I'm just a podcast host, right?
Yeah.
So,
I've got your back.
I might need your help on that.
And I know people now who are sick and tired of this crap, right? I know people that are tired of a state that is so arrogant that it thinks it can just punish its citizens and get away with it.
I will tell you, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, first of all, it's been a pleasure to get to know you.
Same
I
here,
have
thank
really
you.
enjoyed every second of it. You are a good man.
Thank
You're
you.
an honest person. You're doing it for the right reasons. Anybody who says otherwise is full of shit. But I will also
Goop
say,
in the jar.
yeah, I will. One for the swear jar. I already am drinking because of the results. So, but I will also say that it has been so meaningful for us to, for the first time, getting involved in the political process in any way, to be involved in this process, to watch voters exercise this right. To do what you guys did in such a short time frame is never been done before.
Right.
And to give voters the feeling, as you did, that they can make a difference, they can have their voice heard. 4 of the, maybe 4, hopefully, of the 7 passing. You mentioned Amber Golday and her family, the family of a little girl who was hit and killed because of the police pursuit law. So when you reflect on wins like that, you know, that the legislature had to fix the police pursuit law because of what you did and what all these Washingtonians did, you know, almost in honor of little Immaculée Golday. How does that make you feel?
I think that one in particular is sort of emotional, right? Because there was loss of life, and I feel bad. Even, like, I really feel bad. I don't think it's, like, Republicans don't feel good about using tragedy to sort of promote something, so I was very cautious about it. And then I met her parents, and her parents were so frustrated by the stupidity of the law they had gone to the legislature, they had pleaded with the legislature to make changes, and people told them, no, you're going to have to go through this long process, you may have to do an initiative, it's really hard.
Yeah.
And so when we were doing the initiative and they found out we were doing it, it was rewarding to sort of receive their support, because they had been, well, where do you turn? If you're an average citizen, where do you turn?
Well, and that's the thing is this process has allowed average citizens to have a voice and to feel like someone has their back.
Right.
You know, the Gold Aids are not people who would have otherwise come out and spoke up and been on the steps of the Capitol,
No way.
rallying
Right,
hundreds
right.
of people. Mike Dunn with Dunn Lumber, who came out, it's like, I'm sick of my business being people
Right.
driving stolen cars into my business. And those are the voices that really matter. And regardless of the outcome tonight, you gave, and this is going to sound so like I'm ingratiating myself, I don't need to do that, we're already friends. You gave people a voice who didn't even dream of using their voice to make a difference. And that is significant, Brian. And for anybody who would vilify you as some evil oligarch, like, honestly, just kick rocks. It's just so ridiculous. So what's next for you? Somebody was chanting as you were on stage, Brian Haywood for governor. Are you crazy enough to do that?
Not right now.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
I think, there's a lot of avenues that we can think about.
yeah.
There is certainly we've created a machine that can do an initiative.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't win these. I've cracked the front part of how to take a $20 million process and make it a $1 to $2 million process. The back end I haven't cracked yet. How do I take $40 million of advertising and how do I fight back against that?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be thinking about that, right? So that's a piece I've never experienced before, and I'm certainly got ideas, and I'll be spending some time thinking about that. I'm interested in the media, right? And not to compete with you, but to amplify the
don't
voice.
Compete with me.
No,
I'm
no,
a nice
no.
lady.
I want to amplify your voice, and I need to figure out how to amplify. There's certain media outlets that have total control. It's not just how they say it. It's not like, oh, this guy, he's a bad guy, he's whatever. That's a certain bias. But that's not the worst issue. The worst issue is when Bob Ferguson is able to keep a lawsuit secret all the way to the Supreme Court,
Right.
and not one single media outlet covered it. That's a problem.
Yeah, it's what they choose to not cover that's almost more
exactly.
significant. Than
It's
what they
not
choose to
almost.
cover.
It's worse.
Yeah, and I am. I've never been more disappointed in my former profession. You know, I do the media now. I'm not a journalist anymore. I'm not pretending to be the best journalist that ever
Right.
walked the face of the earth or to be so, self-righteous. But that's not what, I've never told, I don't know if we've had this conversation. I mean, I dreamed of being a journalist since I was in the 6th grade. I had a really dysfunctional family, but we always watched the evening news.
Right,
And I kind of
right.
saw those reporters all over the world, and I was like, well, if I was there, I wouldn't have to be here.
Right, right.
And so everything I
Right.
did from the 6th grade on was about being a journalist. And I got to this dream, and then I'm like, oh my God, this isn't what it's supposed to be. This isn't what we're supposed to be doing. So media and just getting fairness. It's not even asking for preference. Getting fairness, I think,
Yeah.
would have been key
Yeah.
to having more successes on the initiatives tonight.
Yeah, and I don't want them to I don't need them to put the finger on the
No.
on the
We
weight
don't- we don't
scale
want
for
it, yeah.
me. No, but report it fairly and report both sides
Yeah.
and say the bad things that the other side is doing as well, right? And there's a couple of journalists that I don't think are too bad, but I think the institutions themselves, and it's quite possible. Like if I were to be charitable, I would say, well, maybe they're afraid, right? And I mean this seriously. Like one of the things I've discovered going around the state is the people that have money, billionaires, half billionaires, were afraid to donate because of what you call the Tim Eyman treatment. Bob Ferguson made it his personal mission to destroy Tim Eyman.
Yeah.
Tim Eyman has $4 million in fines that he'll never crawl out of.
Ruined his life.
And that ruined his life. And this is because Bob Ferguson made it personal and went after him. And everyone's afraid to say, oh, what are you doing saying Bob Ferguson's name on air? He's petty, pushy, and overly ambitious. People are afraid of him, and he's going to be, it looks like he might be the governor. And
Nightmare.
it's quite possible that the media is also afraid of the tyranny of either him or of Olympia.
I'll tell you, that's not the job for you then.
What's
Bottom
that?
line, that's not the job for you then. If you're a member of the media and you're afraid of Bob Ferguson or the tyranny or losing your tax credits or whatever it is, it's not the freaking job for you. Find another job. be a PR flacky, do whatever it is. That's not the job for you. You're not doing what the Fourth Estate was designed to do. I have no sympathy for you.
Yeah.
You don't think we're scared? You don't think we consulted an attorney before we went full bore in with
Right.
Dave Reichert's campaign? Of course we did.
Yeah.
It's the price you pay, though. So Brian Haywood, put that mic down. Let me shake your hand.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, go party.
All right.
Go party.
All right.
All right, so Brian Haywood, he's off. He's going, backer of the initiatives, not the result that he wanted to see, but still an excited crowd here to be here. We're in at Vossler Studios in Kirkland. People watching the results of the presidential race coming in, and maybe the presidential race is the only thing that could lift our spirits tonight. For those of us who understand, in a blue state, we need some change. First-time Trump voter here. Last check of delegates, 232 for the former president, 216 for Kamala Harris. Trump right now leading in Wisconsin. He's leading in Michigan. He's leading in Pennsylvania. He's leading in Georgia, but the races are far too close to call. So we are going to talk about some more local results. I know that we're also going to see if we want to have any of the candidates join us. I think some of them are pretty disappointed in the results that we've seen so far. But there are some interesting races. If you watch unDivided, we kind of have honed in on some legislative races that to me are bigger than their individual districts. They signify something larger than just the results in one district. So I want to go through a couple of those. First, the 41st Legislative District, the race for state senate. So this is the race that pits Jaskaran Singh against the incumbent Lisa Wellman. Jaskaran is, first of all, a new American citizen, and he started to get attention because he's a landlord who's had a squatter living in his house for 2 years and hasn't paid rent. So that spurred him to want to get involved, but not the result I'm sure he wanted to see, but 70% for Lisa Wellman, she's going to keep her seat, 30% for Jaskaran Singh. There's a couple things there. He was super new to this. He dove into that race at the last minute. He didn't perform well in the primary either, so he's fairly new to the political scene, but also, and this is something I'll say to Republicans, you can't win races on social media. You have to win races going door to door, and I know Jaskaran spent a lot of time in the final days of his campaign going out, meeting voters. I love to see people like him involved, immigrant, brand new citizen to this country. But I see some of these new candidates get a little too interested in sort of viral moments on social media or things like that. Look, social media is not real life. I say the same thing every time a candidate believes social media can win them an election. If social media won you elections, Kari Lake would be the governor of Arizona, Lauren Culp would be the governor of Washington. It's not the same as going out and reaching voters individually. Another legislative race that I was out there encouraging people to vote for a Democrat, because it's one of those things where as Democrats solidify their majorities, and this one's in the 45th Legislative District, as Democrats solidify their majorities, they're going to start picking off the moderates. And that's one of the things that happened here in the state Senate race between the incumbent Larry Springer and the far-left challenger Melissa Demian. And I told Republicans, don't sit this one out if you're in the 45th, which is like Kirkland, Duval, Sammamish, you've got to vote for Larry Springer. I like to think maybe some people listen to us. Larry Springer winning decidedly. He's got 57% of the vote. Melissa Demian, 41% of the vote. That is a good result. That is a good result. Melissa Demian supported rent control. Larry Springer has blocked things like rent control. And so, not all Democrats are created equal, so I'm happy to see that Larry Springer is going to keep his seat there. All right. Do I got to talk about, oh my God, I just saw the results. You guys, there's no drink stiff enough. There's no drink stiff enough for this one. 43rd Legislative District. This is the district that's in downtown Seattle. It is the worst off legislative district in the entire state, and they're going to send a socialist to Olympia. They're going to send a freaking socialist to Olympia. Sean Scott absolutely crushing Andrea Suarez, 68% of the vote, 31% of the vote. Let me ask you this. How bad do things have to be? This is baffling to me. You have someone like Andrea Suarez who's dedicated her life to helping homeless people, to actually going out there, literally doing the dirty work, cleaning up homeless encampments, cared so much, was so sad and disappointed at the state of things, started cleaning up homeless encampments, getting drug-addicted people access to services more quickly than the government could or would, and actually doing something to make a difference. Running against an actual socialist, that's self-identified, who supports police abolition, not police defunding, police abolition, who celebrated the riots in 2020, who celebrated police cars lit on fire, who has celebrated the pro-Hamas protesters who have blocked freeways and blocked access to the airport. So the voters in Seattle have so lost their minds that they'll send the socialist police abolitionist ahead of the woman who started a grassroots volunteer organization to actually clean things up. How do you fix that? How do you fix that? Unfixable. And I'll tell you what, there was, Sean Scott came out and said Mayor Bruce Harrell supported his campaign. Mayor Bruce Harrell has never admitted to it. But Mayor Bruce Harrell, you are now responsible for any bad policies Sean Scott pushes in Olympia. It's insane to me. I cannot believe that's probably the most disappointing result of the entire night. And that's saying a lot. Sorry, I'm not trying to depress you guys. I also want to talk about the 10th legislative district. We talked earlier about Ron Muzol's race in that legislative district, but this specifically has to do with State House. Clyde Shavers won this seat a couple years ago, even though he lied about his military service. And ever since then, I've just wanted to see him lose his job because I don't think anybody who lies about their military service should be able to serve in a political position. I said the same thing about Semi Bird. There was more than enough evidence to suggest that Semi Bird had at least inflated some of his military service. I don't care what political party you're from, that crosses a line. And so Clyde Shavers, the Democrat who was able to capture that seat, the news came out only after ballots had gone out that he had lied about his military service. He served in the military, he just chose to inflate it. And so Kerry Kennedy, who's a military spouse, challenged him this time around on the Republican side, but she's losing. Clyde Shavers, 54% of the vote. Kerry Kennedy has 46% of the vote. I mean, I'm just telling you guys, race after race after race, what a horrible night for the Washington State Republican Party. What a bad night for the Washington State Republican Party. There are still some races where it's just too close to call, I get it. But a lot of these are just incredibly unfortunate. I think the party has a lot of soul searching to do. You saw the Republican Party this time around go to this endorsement process where, frankly, it endorsed a lot of the candidates that were further to the right. People, we live in a blue state. If you think the key to beating Democrats is to support candidates who are further to the right, you've lost your damn minds. That makes no sense. It makes no sense. The math does not compute. So the Republican Party under Jim Walsh has some soul searching to do about the way this campaign cycle went. I think there was a lot of opportunity, a lot of good candidates, not a lot of good strategic campaigning. I do want to go through, and first, Nicole, if you could get the Trump graphics ready for me, because I've made all sorts of bets with you guys throughout the election cycle. And one of the bets I made is I really thought, maybe I'm just totally out of the loop, I really thought that, and it could still be, that this would be that Donald Trump would actually do better this cycle than he has in previous cycles in Washington State. And I'm actually happy to report I just updated these numbers. So I said I thought Trump would do over 40%. So in 2016, he did 38.07. In 2020, he did 38.77. And right now, he's doing 38.9. So he's doing better so far than other years. But in our state, he's got 40% of the vote, Kamala Harris 60% of the vote. So obviously, Kamala Harris is going to get our delegates. But that number for 2024 for Trump, as of just a few seconds ago, is 38.9%. Come on, Donald, you can get to 40. I didn't bet anything particular on it. But also worth noting, Robert F. Kennedy and Nicole Shanahan got only 1% of the vote in Washington State. So not a lot of people biting onto that independent option, maybe after he joined the campaign of former President Donald Trump. So I want to go through, for those of you who have... we've got some super chats too I'll get to, so if you dropped a super chat in the YouTube's comment, I will read that before we end the show. We're not ending right now, but I want to go through, if it's good with the team, and recap some of the key races top to bottom, just to let you guys know where things stand. So we just went through the presidential election, which I want to look really quickly at where the delegates stand. So 39% for Donald Trump in our state, 59% for Kamala Harris. In case you were wondering, if Donald Trump, somebody bet me, didn't I bet you guys? I bet all of our viewers a steak dinner if Donald Trump won Washington. It was a bet I was very, very confident making. So no steak dinners for you. I mean, I still owe Daryl and Nicole steak dinners, so that would have been I would have probably had to file bankruptcy if Donald Trump won Washington, buying you a steak dinner. Right now, Trump's at 248 electoral votes, Harris at 216. I gotta say, Trump winning is the only thing that would save tonight for me. It's been rough, and so we're going to go through the results again, and you'll know just how rough it's been if you are a Republican. If you're a Democrat, then you're probably tickled pink about the results tonight. And look, we live in a blue state. This is what happens. I've been disappointed in elections before. I'm going to be disappointed again. There are a couple races still on the margins that we might be able to eke out some victories. One-party rule is horrible. One-party rule is not good for people, yet it's the people who are choosing that path. That's democracy, right? I don't think one-party rule is good in a red state. I don't think it's good in a blue state. I don't know what it will take to wake people up, but let's take through some of the key races, starting with the race for governor. I think Bob Ferguson is the most dangerous politician of our lifetimes in Washington state. But right now he is on his way to becoming the next governor. He's got 56% of the vote to Dave Reichert's 44% of the vote. I will say Dave is outperforming polling, which is a good thing. He's certainly doing much better than polling indicated that he would, and will obviously, but he's still, far from being able to pull off a victory. I want to go through the initiatives again one more time. The four initiatives, the only one at this juncture that's passing is the initiative to prevent a ban on natural gas, Initiative 2066. Right now it's passing, narrow margin, 51% of the vote to 49% of the vote. I'm not sure that will hold. I think Brian Haywood is hopeful it will hold. He said as much on stage here tonight in Kirkland at the Let's Go Washington party. But obviously too close to call. I don't think any media outlets are going to be calling that. The other initiatives are very disappointing. Initiative 2117, 62% are opposed to repealing the Climate Commitment Act. So they're going to continue to pay higher prices at the pump, and this is only going to embolden the party in power to spend money on climate solutions that aren't working, but line the pockets of themselves when they leave office and of their political cronies and allies. It's not going to help the environment. It's not. All right, Initiative 2124 to make the long-term care tax optional. You get to opt in or opt out. It is failing. 55% of voters saying that they do not want to make the long-term care tax optional. I can only believe that's a result of confusion the way that the ballot was worded. Because this wasn't a popular program when it was rolled out. A lot of people rushed to try to get an exemption in the short window they had to do so. Let's see, the last initiative, 2109. This is the initiative to repeal the capital gains tax, which is illegal. It's unconstitutional as it is, but it's a backdoor income tax. It's failing with 63% of the vote, and what I would tell voters is, when they turn that capital gains tax into an income tax on all of you, we told you so. We told you so. That's what they're going to do. It's what they've said they want to do. It's not a secret. Their inroads was, this is just the rich people. It's only affecting the rich people. Then they immediately introduced a bill to drop the threshold from $250,000 in cap gains to $15,000 in cap gains. So I'm sorry, income tax is coming to Washington State. This was our chance to stop it. We're not going to do it. All right, a couple of the other key races I want to go through. I'm not going to rehash everything. The superintendent of public instruction race, the head of our public school system, one of the biggest disappointments of the evening for me. I really thought that David Olson could pull this off. That seems very unlikely. It seems that despite all the issues in our public education system, toilet test scores, declining enrollment, that voters want to give Chris Reichdahl a third term. That's one of those things where it's pretty hard to wrap your mind around given the state of our public education system. The Commissioner of Public Lands race, this was one that Republicans really felt like they had a chance to win. Jamie Herrera-Butler has the name recognition to do it. She got the endorsements from the Seattle Times and other entities that some more moderate Democrats look to, but Jamie Herrera-Butler trailing, she's outperforming other statewide Republicans. I will say, when you compare where she's at, 47% to 53% for Dave Up the Grove, she is outperforming other state Republicans. So that's good for her. It's maybe not enough to win, but closer than the other races. I want to really quickly jump ahead to the state Supreme Court race, because this is one of the maybe silver linings, way too close to call, but at least Dave Larson is still in the game. In the race for the open seat on the state Supreme Court, Sal Mungia, who has the support of Governor Jay Inslee, of all the other justices on the court, and the Democratic Party, has, I got to go to double digits on this one. Sal Mungia has 49.73%. Dave Larson slightly ahead, 49.78%. That's the difference. 0.05% is the difference in that race. So obviously way, way too close to call. 3 congressional districts I just want to go over one more time here. The 3rd congressional district, Republicans nationally were spending a lot of money on this race. Elon Musk put money into a PAC to try to help Joe Kent, the Republican, trying to reclaim the 3rd congressional district. So far, it doesn't look like it's working, but similar to when these two went head-to-head in 2022, this race looks very, very close. 52% for Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez to 48% for Joe Kent. So certainly that race can still be won by either candidate. In the 4th congressional district, this is an interesting R-on-R race. We don't see a lot of those in our state. Dan Newhouse looks like he's ahead to keep his seat. The current congressman in the 4th voted to impeach former President Donald Trump in 2020, has never lived it down. And so Republicans that run further to the right of him keep trying to take him out. Jared Sessler has spent a lot of his own money to do so, but right now he's trailing. He's got 48% of the vote. Dan Newhouse just over 50%. And then one more I want to sneak in here, the 8th congressional district. Congresswoman Kim Schreier seems poised to keep her seat. This has been historically a red district turned into a swing district when Kim Schreier first won it in 2018. And she's got to be happy with these results. 54% of the vote. Carmen Goers, the Republican challenger, 46% of the vote, or 45% of the vote over in the 8th congressional district. So, you know, and that's interesting because I think Kim Schreier was getting a little worried toward the end. They ended up spending a lot of money on TV very late in that race. So we, again, live election coverage. What a fantastic time this has been. Is that booze too? All right, people are drinking now. I think, to me, look, I'm going to, and Nicole and Daryl, I don't know if you guys are on mic back there, if we're going to throw anybody on or maybe wait to the live show tomorrow. Look, this is, hi Daryl, we got Nicole back there. People want to hear from you.
Yeah, well, we're sharing a mic.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's Bidenomics right now.
Bidenomics.
Yeah.
Nicole, how are you feeling about the evening? Is she? Ugh. It's bad.
Ah.
It's bad, guys. The only saving grace will be Donald Trump.
I know. That's going to be big for us.
The only saving grace will be Donald Trump. I'll just end with this, and a big thank you to Daryl and Nicole. I don't think people realize the difficulty of taking our show on the road. When I was in TV, it would take like a massive crew back at the studio and all this to accomplish something like this. And so Daryl and Nicole doing this, we were out here for the first time. Vossler Studios has been great to work with, and so we really enjoyed being here. So as far as future ballot drops, you know how this goes by now. We get the first one on election night, 8 p.m. We won't have additional ballot drops until 4 p.m. tomorrow. Or Montana, these people vote against their own best interests. It is hard to see people vote against, and I don't think voters are dumb. I'm not saying like my way of voting is the only way, and if you don't vote like me, then you're an idiot. We all have different life experiences, right? I don't know, but some of this stuff is undeniable. Homeless crisis is worse, more expensive, crime is worse, lowest number of police officers per capita of any state in the nation. So what is it that these voters see that outweighs that in their mind? Is it Donald Trump? Does the Republican Party just have no chance until Donald Trump is out of the picture? I think that's a possibility. He has never been popular in Washington. He performs very poorly here. And so maybe the Republicans just need a reset after Donald Trump hopefully serves 4 more years. Baron of Gray Matter, $2 super chat. Antifa's fighting cops at Chaz right now. That's the other thing we're monitoring. We know that Antifa said regardless of the winner of the presidential election, they're rioting in Seattle. Things boarded up in Portland, boarded up in D.C. The far left does what the far left does. Larry Olson, $20 super chat. That second mic causes some issues each time, sad face. Which second mic? This second mic? Just put this over here. Hey, we're getting the swing of it, you know, first time out of the studio, but I appreciate the $20 super chat. Carlene Heath, $5 super chat. Brandi Kruse, thank you for bringing common sense to Washington, even though most won't listen or understand, many of us do. Let's see, Disturbed 0450. Thank you for trying to bring common sense to WA, even though a lot of citizens apparently have not been listening. We appreciate you and Nicole picking up the torch that Dory left and carrying it on with the good fight. Dory would not be happy with the results tonight, that's for sure. Jeannie, Matt Gilbert, thank you for the super chats. Matt says, govern me harder, Daddy, the people of Washington. Yeah, as I said, this election is about, do you want more freedom or do you want more government? The people of Washington want more government. That's their prerogative. This is a democracy. I think a lot of them came to that conclusion after being fed lie after lie after lie on TV by shameless politicians, chief among them Bob Ferguson. How can we trust someone to be governor who lies that freely? The media doesn't hold him accountable for it. I doubt that will change if he's governor of Washington. So that's a very disappointing place to be. So I hate to leave you on a low note. The good news is the world will keep spinning. The other good news is if you are a Republican, you wanted some sort of win tonight. We don't know in the presidential election, but Donald Trump has 248 and Harris has 216. Trump is up in Wisconsin, he's up in Michigan, he's up in Pennsylvania. And so, we'll see what happens there. Trump won Georgia. That was a new call, so that's a very good thing for him. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining us for our live election night coverage from Vossler Studios here in Kirkland. Take the night, sit and stew. We will see you back on the live show tomorrow. In the meantime, please support our work. You can sign up for just $5 a month at undividedpod.com. That's undividedpod.com. Thank you all. We'll see you tomorrow.
We lost connection to the file server, so this is what we got. All right. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. See ya.